invitation to speak. I just remembered actually the only other time that I'd been asked to speak about Barry, and that was at a glittering ceremony at Paul's for Barry's pending engagement. The engagement was a bit of a rocky road. Barry was already getting cold feet very much into the ceremony itself. And it was a case where reality collided with optimism. And unfortunately, it all collapsed in a heap. And I hope the woman never suffered from that experience too much. It was a lovely thing, and it was also reminded me of the many times that Val and I went to Paul and Anne's place, and Barry was there, and so many of our friends here were there on these occasions, whether it was rugby or whether it was Wisty, who's no longer with us, unfortunately, and a whole lot of other reasons that we got together. It was unforgettable, and I really thank Paul and Anne for their hospitality on those occasions. I first met Barry in 1965 when I went to East to play rugby, and I'd come from university, and university always seemed to have the thought that if they didn't win, the stars weren't appropriately in line, whereas at East hadn't had a very good season the previous year, and if anything they expected to lose. In fact, the first match we had in that season, I was standing and a guy came up to me who'd been playing at East for a while and said, "Here we go, another loss." And I said, "Over my dead body, we should kill this crowd." We win by 1 point, but the most exciting thing was that we won the next 6 games straight. It was just a beautiful thing, how people's confidence rose. And Barry was a very important element in all that, not only in his play, but his enthusiasm and his drive to get us in. And then Barry decided to leave before the end of the season, and Paul and I described that as treason. But anyway, he was a great guy, and our friendship grew from there. And we were both away for some period of time out of the country. And then I came back in 1970, and I met Barry, and again then I found out what he was up to, and I said, "Yeah, I agree with that completely." And so we got involved in the protests against apartheid, and then we were invited to, Barry and I had a few speaking engagements, which was always interesting. We were invited up to Canberra by Barry Cohen and John Wheeldon, and we gave a presentation to an assembled throng. Unfortunately, they were all Labor parliamentarians. There were no Liberal Party or Country Party in those days there. So anyway, we learned a bit, but they seemed to appreciate what we said. And then we had another engagement that we were invited by John Morris to. He was the head of the Liquor and Trades Union and Allied Trades, and so we went along. It was to the Trades Hall, and we were invited to speak to the collected throng there of dignitaries. And anyway, so Barry gave his spiel, and then I gave my spiel, and we thought, oh, it went pretty well. Anyway, as we later found out that Barry Unsworth, who was quite a big figure in those days and eventually became Premier, was heard twice saying to someone else, "Who invited those pinkos?" So we learned a bit about politics on that occasion, and we were great friends anyway, and had a lovely time talking about politics and the way that whole campaign had developed. But in the last period, Catherine Warren and I used to go out and see Barry every 2 weeks at the hospital, and to just talk about things and see how he was. And it sort of reminded me of, actually, I read a book of poetry by Clive James. It's called Injury Time. And to me, that was Barry's injury time. That lovely 3 months, where he got the opportunity to tell so many stories. the stories were great, but you always say there was a certain element of exaggeration. Anyway, we always cut him a bit of slack and let him flow, and they were great stories. I mean, one was about the Icelandic trawling experience. I noticed it was described as fishing. It was a bit more than fishing. Anyway, Barry was on this Icelandic trawler in winter, and one of the things he had to do was take an axe and chop the ice off the halyards and ropes on the trawler, because if in fact that was allowed to build up, the trawler could actually turn topsy-turvy. Anyway, that was just one, and then he talked about his mum, and that was great, about how he appreciated the efforts that she went to get him a good education, etc. He talked about house painting, he talked about chess. He also had a very vivid description of Pomeroy and the Goulburn winter, which actually froze him to the bone. In some cases it was so cold he actually refused to go outside. Anyway, and then there were the various betting escapades, the triumphs and the losses. So each one of those stories, I mean, he told with sort of such great elan, and it was a lovely time. And then we started talking about Clive James, and Catherine lent him a book, Nefertiti and the Flat Tower, and I got a poem to him which Clive James wrote at school with Reg Gasnier. And so we had a long talk about that. It was just incredible. I mean, everyone sort of talked about the range of interests that Barry had, and it was just wonderful how we tried to give him a bit of time, a rest, so we'd speak together, so that Barry could actually collect his energy, and then he'd be off again. And it was such a lovely experience, and such a superb sort of example of Barry's interests and his certain intelligence, his sense of humour, his self-deprecation, and above all, his enthusiasm. I thank Misha and Sasha for inviting me to say these words today. I'll miss Barry. He was an absolute life force. Thank you.